Hey, everybody, and welcome to As the World Works. Today, I'm going to go back about a year, exactly a year. Yesterday, I was attempting to walk 100 miles to raise $100,000 for veterans and first responders. Made it almost 60 miles when I kind of fell out due to dehydration, which is kind of weird when you consider it's a day like today, chilly and rainy. How do you get dehydrated after 21 hours of walking straight? Anyway, it's for a great cause. Was a member of the Bird's Eye View Project, which does a lot of great things for veterans and first responders. So walking around the lake, White Rock Lake, several loops, and people would join you here and there. And then this interesting person shows up, and she's kind of walking with me for a while. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? And we're just kind of chatting about things and life and, kind of why I would get involved to make such a change in the world. And I was like, I'm just a small guy trying to do something bigger than myself, right? So turns out my guest, Beth Wheaton, Dr. Beth Wheaton, is a professor at my alma mater, SMU, Southern Methodist University. And she's a professor of economics. She does not like titles, although she is Dr. Beth Wheaton. So I'm going to introduce to you guys my pal, Beth Wheaton. Hey, Beth.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. So soon after that, she invites me to speak and participate in her economics classes, which was kind of always a dream of mine to be in academia, to be a professor. So it gave me an opportunity to stand or sit or whatever humbly by somebody that's making big differences in the lives of young minds and getting out into the world and looking at risk versus reward balances, things like that, and economics. But the bigger part that really inspires me about Beth, about you, is you're most interested in inspiring others, creating things that create social change, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're the founder and CEO of Equip the Saints. Let's talk about Equip the Saints for a second. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it was, and now it isn't. So it's been
Okay.
interesting. So for 11 years, last summer, we actually dissolved Equip the Saints. It was a nonprofit consultancy. It was a nonprofit organization that consulted to nonprofit organizations. And for a lot of years, we worked to help strengthen nonprofits just kind of wherever they were, helping them find resources, talking them through problems, connecting them with people and with, whatever resources might be there. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. I got to work with a lot of professionals. I got to work with a lot of students at SMU and other places. And so just really kind of fit their dreams of changing the world into Equip the Saints. We dissolved it because so many other organizations had popped up doing very similar work to what we do. And as an economist, of course, I'm interested in efficiency, and I just saw efficiency decreasing because there were these other organizations who could do parts of what we were doing better than we could, more efficiently. And so we decided it was time to shut it down and go on and do other things. So it was a neat time. 11 years we worked with it, did some really cool stuff, and it was just time to move on. So that's been cool.
So how long have you been at SMU?
I've been there, let's see, this coming January will be 15 years.
And you were part of the inaugural group that moved into the, what's it called? Student or
faculty and residence, yeah.
Faculty and residence.
Commons, yeah. So we had, they built five new residential commons, or people would call dorms, and then one professor. There are 11 professors that live on campus in apartments within the dorm, within the residential commons. And so for 4 years, I lived in Cockrell McIntosh, which is one of the older residential commons. And they built a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment that my dog and I lived in. That was great. And really, my job was to be the intellectual head of the residential common. So I got to bring in all sorts of really interesting people. I got to take students out to events, whether it was the orchestra or a play or to hear a speech, and had a really neat time. And during the time I was faculty in residence, I actually wrote. That's when did the bulk of writing my textbook, and it was a really good time because I was living there with the students. I was, every time I opened the door to my apartments, I was with students, and so it was just a really good time to be in their lives and kind of understand, all right, how can I build a textbook that would speak to them, that would help them to change the world, learn how to change the world.
And that textbook is the economics of human
rights.
Rights.
Yeah.
And that was published in what, 16?
No, it was published just last year, so 2019.
Oh, okay. What's the book that I'm thinking? Okay, so but the research and everything up to that point, right, is about child labor and the economics of,
I tell people if you do an internet search for economics of human trafficking, that's me. And so I've did research on child labor. That's really my passion, is child labor issues. And then because I had a crossover with another professor who was doing prostitution issues and marginalized people, and then with my child labor research, then we did research together on human trafficking.
So my dad was a home builder, right? And so every summer between like 9 and 16 and 17 till I went to college, I was working every summer building, just throwing stuff in the trash. So I always said that he was abusing child labor. We're talking about a different thing there.
And I think when I went to do my PhD, I really went because I had a passion for child labor issues, and I wanted to, get rid of it. I wanted all children to be in school and not be working, and, and really had to become an economist and say, okay, that's not going to happen. So, what can we do? What are, where are some places where we can use resources efficiently? And, and I would like to see children in school, learning things. I would like to see children not doing work that could be hazardous to their health, hazardous to, their mental health or physical health. So hopefully your dad was going that direction.
I'm sorry. Well, admittedly, I had my first reaction when we were walking together and you were telling me about this book and what you do. My mind went to sex trafficking, and you expanded sort of my worldview on this is not just that, it's part of that, but there's a chapter in your textbook that lightly covers it. And then you were talking about so this is actually a textbook, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you so
much. Getting published. But you were also talking about creating one for the rest of us to actually read less.
So it's well, I mean, 2020 happened, so this has been just crazy. I thought I would have a lot more time to write. Actually, I teach full time at SMU, so I'm a senior lecturer and I teach 4 courses. I have over 200 students right now, so learning how to do everything I have to do online. I have students online, I have students here in the United States and in their home countries. I've got students in class. So trying to keep up with all that has really kind of put a stitch in my writing time, but Christmas is coming, so look forward to that time to write. And I wrote the textbook because I can't do it all myself. I can't do all the research. There's so much research that needs to be done in economics and other fields. And I realized I just can't do that research. And so I was trying to find a way, how can I put together information to give people a foundation of several different topics, and then let their ideas go, right? Let them build on top of those ideas and say, okay, what can I do now with one of these topics, or with any topic? How can you use economics and look at social issues and really build on top of that? And so I wrote the textbook for students, really for upper level undergraduate students, but it could be used by anyone. And then I had so many people, I'd tell them about the textbook and they'd be like, oh, that's really neat. But I would never read a textbook. And I was like, oh, yeah, I get you. I wouldn't, don't read textbooks too often, although I might do once in a while. And so what I'm working on is to rewrite the textbook and to add some other stuff to it, but for regular people. So it is the economics of human trafficking, but it's looking at human rights through the lens of economics. And really, how do we use economics to look at things? You can look at things with all sorts of lenses, but how to use economics specifically to look at human rights issues.
So you got your undergrad and doctorate from Temple University?
No, undergrad is from Sam Houston State here in Texas. Yeah.
Are you from here?
Yeah. And then I have a master's from Grambling State, Louisiana, and then a master's Ph.D. from Temple University. So
what is the senior lecturer?
Senior lecturer, that's a full-time. So it's a 3-year contract, and I teach full-time. I don't have any research requirements. All I do is teach. That's what I'm required to do for SMU. Although I can't seem to not do research, so I'm always doing that as well.
I want to talk about how economics, because your master or your doctorate's in economics, correct?
Yeah.
Your PhD. So I had Willie Veronnet on the other day. And also a professor at SMU who is doing some amazing things.
Yeah, really is.
As he calls it, people living homeless situation, right? Not homeless people. So the subtleties and those nuances are not just semantics; they're truly sort of what we're all experiencing. And I'm curious how this pandemic this year has really impacted how you're able to get data and do research and get out in the field. And so how limiting that has been, because that's important, right? To actually collect information directly from the field.
Right. It is, but so the textbook, I'll say, covers right now, the textbook that I published last year, it covers human rights, economics, human rights in general, and then it covers 7 topics, which are capital punishment. I have to do them in order every time. Violence against women, seeking asylum, terrorism, child abuse, genocide, and hate. And so how to use economics to look at these topics. And so I keep reminding the students and, keep reminding myself as well, I'm not an expert in any of those topics. I'm an economist. And it's really what, in business school, because all my upper level education's in business school. So they teach you, you're the expert. And I'm like, okay, honestly, we're not, not the expert. I know something about economics. Certainly don't know everything about economics, but I know how to use economics. And so really when we're looking at economics of violence against women, I'm not really gathering the data for that. I can be looking at a specific study and then going out to speak with the experts to see what they're doing, to see what data is available. And you can go do research and gather data, but there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of data out there on any one of the topics. And so, and there's a lot of research that needs to be done with that data that has not been done with the data. So it could be medical data and there's been medical research done on it, but there hasn't been economics research done on it. So, I think right now that the more important thing is to go after, to see what the issues are and then to go after the data that's already out there. But it's really first to go and speak to the experts in those fields and say, okay, if we're looking at human trafficking, to speak to experts now, how is COVID affecting human trafficking? And it absolutely is. It's causing some really bad ripples, in what we used to be able to do and now what we can do because of closures and things like this. And so it's really talking to those experts and saying, okay, where are we now? What data do we have available? Is the data relevant right now, or is it not? Because the situation's changed. And so we have data on what used to be, but, has it changed enough that data is no longer relevant? We need to go some other direction.
So is somebody doing research on the economic impacts of pandemics? As we speak, sure. There's.
I don't know. I have not seen much on the pandemic. I have seen some, so there have been a few articles out, research on the pandemic. I have not looked at them particularly. A lot of research in economics has to do with financial, so I mean, just the bulk of it, is going to be financial stuff. But
So if you could give a broad, if someone 18 entering into college thinking, I don't know what I want to do. What would you how would you implore them to attend an economics class? By that I mean, what is the broad worldview? When I came to speak in your class, I had no idea what we were going to talk about. In a way, it was the cost benefit analysis of being an actor versus being in real estate, right? And the summary was, real estate's kind of the best scenario because, the cost versus, it was the summary of the class. They all went there. Right. But then I left there thinking there can be an and. Right here I am today, doing the and.
I think that, but it's important because we think, well, your parents say, well, I'd like to be an actor. And they're like, why don't you go into real estate instead? And, and say that it is like, well, that, it's not what I want to do, but I mean, to actually go through the process of thinking that out, not just saying, well, yeah, being real estate, it's going to put food on the table. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, grandma, and so how do we explain that and making them think that through? And so really for me, economics is a way of thinking, and how do we think through that? So I wanted them to see something like, they don't know about, most of them don't know about either of their fields or any of the stuff that you do. And so how can we look at something totally outside of what they're used to and use economics to get into it? Because if you can do that, if you can step into something you know nothing about, which is really what the textbook is about. I don't know anything about seeking asylum. Okay, here's how to get into that. And then how can you see what the decisions are being made? And if you can do that, then you can do it in a different topic,
Which makes sense to get in your class early so that you can look at the efficiencies of, finding a path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said, I was afraid you're going to say, and you said, how do I, entice somebody to take an economics class? And well, if they're going to business school, they have to anyway. So you just have to entice them; they have to do it anyway. I just try to make them understand that it's interesting. It's good stuff. And they're doing a lot of it anyway, but we're going to put some formal language and formal training behind it so they can use it efficiently. But I thought you were going to say, try to entice people to go into economics, and I never do. It's certainly not for everybody, but when your brain works that way, it does. And, it becomes pretty clear, at least by end of your second class, maybe third class, then you go, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. Because it's just a way of thinking, a way of applying information to the rest of the world.
So I knew that I knew you liked nature because you were out, on this walk. I didn't know it was because, pardon?
Walking 9 miles around the lake, it's not for everybody.
I just thought, I thought, well, she likes nature and she stumbled upon me. But was that intentional, or was that something that that you found? Do you look for? Do you look for these things?
Yeah. So I've been looking. I mean, I'm always looking for because we're doing Equip the Saints, and so always on the lookout for what nonprofit organizations are going on, especially in around this area and stuff like that. And so I've been watching Bird's Eye View Project, and I saw that I was watching you planning this thing and just seeing what was going on with Bird's Eye View. So that's where I figured out that this crazy person was walking 100 miles
that was me.
Around a lake many times, and I thought, oh, that's cool. But I think when I was very young, I would fall in love with potential, and I'd see potential in people, and and it's really tough because I have students who I see lots of potential, and I'd fall in love with that potential, and so many times be disappointed by that, because potential is just that. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there and being something amazing, but something that hasn't happened yet. And so really when I see, my passion is for world changers. And it was my slogan before it was SMU's, by the way. So they stole it, but that's okay. They have copyrights now, so that's cool. But I have a passion for people that want to make a difference. And so when I saw that you were out there, and it's like, not just, hey, this is a cool organization, you should donate to it. I did, open your wallet. No, it was, this is a really neat organization. They have some a great mission. They're doing some great work. How do I put myself in the place to be sacrificial, to not only help them financially, but to get people to know what's going on? I mean, that's what you did. You're walking 100 miles. People are like, whoa, we got to see that. And then, in the middle of that, you had to be dramatic and, go to the hospital and stuff. So it just expanded all that.
That wasn't acting.
I know.
It was real paramedics in a real ambulance, real ER.
And I've been watching that because I decided I was going to go walk, at least one lap around with you, during that. And I thought, that's cool. I'll go do that because on a weekend I can do that. And then I had actually gotten up, I think at like 2 a.m, and got onto the podcast that you were doing, or the updates. And I saw sometime must have been right after that you had to go to the hospital. And so I was like, oh, I can't go then, So I've been watching you doing the walking, but then you had to cut it off because you actually go in the hospital. And so then I watched, and then when you picked up the second time and we're doing the miles, then I believe that's when I connected with you to do the walk. But, so I've been following since before you did the walk, but it was just, you took that potential and you put it into practice, and in a big way, and, unfortunately, somewhat detrimental to your health, but you believed in enough to put yourself into a place of sacrifice. And that's world changing, I think. So when you had kind of invited me to do this podcast interview, it's not my comfort zone. I'm sitting here in my tiny house, my dog's sleeping beside me. It's odd because I see world changing really as being action, and to say somebody's a world changer, I'm like, I don't do titles, so I guess that's why I can't understand that. But to see somebody do world changing actions, then I'm like, oh yeah, I am in. Let me help you. What can I do to support you? And move you forward, just maybe one more step. But that's exciting, just to see people.
You're changing the world every day with students' minds. Yeah, if I had, and so I have the utmost admiration for you, and admittedly, to have you by my side for part of that journey last year, because that's what it's all about, is to have, this isn't a sojourn by any means. It's always someone walking by your side makes it more comfortable, right? Even in the discomforting parts. So I was thinking about your oh, wow, that's interesting. You just said you're stepping out of your comfort zone right now for the support of this podcast. Really, it's about shining the light on your work and what you're doing. And I saw in your class, these student mind, I saw a few asleep. That's just kind of what I did in elected classes. That didn't have anything to do with you drawing their attention, but there were bright minds that were very alert at 8 a.m. class, which is very difficult on a Friday. I think it was a Friday class that they came in. But you're involved with other organizations as well, sort of from a distance, right? Or very involved.
Yeah. Mostly, yeah. And mostly I try to be less involved because, I found that, and I guess when I grew up in South Dakota, a small town of about 1,000 people. So still have a little bit of an accent when I get tired. And I always wanted to change the world. I wanted to do something big, but I lived in South Dakota. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any connections. Internet wasn't out yet, by the way. So there was just, so little I could do, but I wanted to save the puppies and kitties, and I wanted to save the gorillas, and I wanted to save the environment, and all these things I wanted to do, to help out, just to do something big. Not, and again, I don't like being put in in front of a camera just because I don't. That's I want to do this stuff. That's what is exciting to me. It's not the recognition for doing this stuff. I don't quite understand that part of it, but to be able to do that stuff. But at that point in time, I couldn't. but God led me on a long journey, and I have got a PhD and all this craziness. And now I can help people that do those things, that save the puppies and kitties and that save the gorillas and that work on the environment. And I can be part of that. But I find that the best use of my time is not to be involved, tightly tied to another organization, because I am much more of a consultant. I can bring resources to them. I can connect people and organizations with each other. And I can do a lot more good that way than I can if I'm actually tied to an organization. So besides Equip the Saints, I really haven't been tied to organizations, just because I have organizations come to me all the time, emailing or meeting them, or other professors at SMU or other places who are doing big things. And then I get to be involved with them, but rarely am I actually part of the organization, just because they kind of come to me for resources and connections more.
So you're talking about the cost benefit analysis of my journey, and it's always easy to play Monday morning quarterback, right? In your life, as you're sitting there recovering for weeks from something that you attempted. And it could be anything, it could be life. But in hindsight, it would have been great to have that analysis or that opportunity probably in January of last year versus June, when I made the decision to walk 4 or 5 months later, to look at, maybe want to train now. Rather, you may want to give yourself a little bit longer to train.
I
But now
didn't think you were crazy. I just thought it was world changing. I didn't,
Yeah.
be about your training process, or I would have maybe jumped into that for some advice. But
yeah, that's part of it, though, right? You surround your people, like you just said, with connections and the people that have gone down that path before. It's not necessarily your own, but it offers some nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah.
So how does so your journey was in South Dakota, traversed over to undergrad, grad, doctorate, SMU. No one could duplicate that today. It's much more efficient and much more streamlined, I guess. Just with the advent of the internet, we're more connected. But then all of a sudden you have this pandemic, right? That just shifts everything around, the way we do things, the way you teach, the way you interact, and so how is there an economics of adaptation, of adapting?
Is there formally? I don't know. Pretty much any topic you can say, oh yeah, well there's this, you can look at some risk analysis or something like that and say, yes, it has to do with this because, and everyone who's not an economist goes to sleep while you're trying to explain how that connects to it. So I don't know that there is that research on economics of adaptation. There's probably some research like that. So
let's talk about you. How did you personally adapt to those changing environments, coming from a very small Midwestern town?
Well, I don't think I had much choice, really. So my dad was a pastor in a small church up in South Dakota. So I grew up as a PK, preacher's kid, which is all that. And then he moved us to Texas so he could get his PhD at Sam Houston State in criminal justice, which is the top school in the nation. And so, I've got 3 siblings, my mom and dad. And so they moved us to Texas. We still had no money. The first house we moved into, very small. The first day we moved in, there's a tarantula walking across the floor. I wanted to go back to South Dakota. That's ridiculous. We don't have spiders like that up there. And so,
I can deal with the cold, not the spiders.
Yeah. So I think it was just a very big shock. But I think that it helped me too, because as I moved from, I was here in Texas, I went to Louisiana, back to Texas, up to Pennsylvania, back to Texas, hope to move to the mountains next time. But doing that, it just, Amen. Yeah. But being able to do that, to move place to place, and I guess my mind is a scientific mind. So I was kind of sit back and look at what's going on and listen, and try to I don't know, I'm just always trying to figure out what's happening, and probably with a lens of economics to say, why are people doing that? What incentives do they have, for doing these things? And so just figuring that out I think has been very good for me as a person and as an economist, just because you get to see different cultures. I mean, you maybe not think Louisiana and Texas culture is so different, but yeah, very, very, very much is. So, and I went to Grambling, so I was a minority there. And so being able to have those experiences and say, of course I lived through it, but also I started teaching at Grambling. So here I still have a South Dakota accent, a little white lady teaching these kids who are not much younger than me. And I was the only white person in the room, and so really had to figure out, okay, how do I, because I couldn't speak about my stuff, they didn't get it. So I couldn't use examples of my stuff. I had to draw out from them, okay, what about this? Tell me about music. Tell me about this, and then really draw them into it. So I think that helped me learn how to teach, is to be viewing them, seeing what's going on, seeing the interactions, and then draw out of them their stories and use their stories in my teaching. And so I think that's a lot of what I do is, I looked at your story and I was watching your story online. I was like, oh, this is an interesting story. I think I'll join in since he's inviting people to come walk. And so I'm like, okay, see what that story looked like and to learn from that. So I think that's, been a lot of what I've done in life. And that's really how I wrote the textbook, is just to see what are people's stories. And in the textbook, at the beginning of each chapter, there are perspectives from people who, Dr. Rick Halpern at SMU saw a person put to death. And so he's an expert on capital punishment. And so being able to hear his story of what that's like to sit, there watching at the death chamber, to hear about a, person who's the only person left of his family from the Rwanda genocide, so being able to get somewhat into their lives, and then being able to ask them questions like, what in the world is going on here? I'm looking at this through a lens of economics. I'm looking at the decisions being made and the incentives. Is this what I'm actually seeing? Is there something else I'm missing? And so I'd be able to go to those experts and really kind of dig in their minds. And some of the stuff is my students in the economics human rights class, which we now have a class at SMU, which is so exciting to have that class. But they have to get into the minds of a perpetrator of child abuse, a perpetrator of genocide, and really look at that. What decisions are they making? What are the benefits they're getting out of doing this? What are their costs? So we talk about benefits and costs kind of like, well, it's, kind of foolish. And I'm like, but that's kind of the decision they're making. They're looking at those things and saying, hey, I'm going to commit genocide. I don't think you just do that just because, hey, let me go do this thing that is actually, there's something out there that is benefiting you, not only just monetarily, but, and other benefits. And the costs are not enough, to stop you from doing that. So, then you look at the international community and say, okay, what could we do to decrease the benefits to those folk or increase the cost to them? Because
do you see that sort of information, that sort of research, published books like yourself have written, and do you see like incremental or exponential impacts on governments, on regions, on countries?
So the research that I have done with economics of human rights, it was published last year. It's the first textbook of its kind. There's very, very little research done at all in these topics, which is one reason I wrote it, because I'd have graduate students coming to me saying, hey, Dr. Wheaton, I really want to change the world. How do I do that? And I'm like, your professor probably doesn't know how to do that research. So getting really into the social sciences kind of part of that instead of the economics like finance stuff. And so there is research out there, and a lot of it's case studies and things like that haven't been put together, so that they can make a huge impact. And that's really a big reason why I wrote the textbook, is because that it isn't out there. We need more economists to do the research on these things.
Did you help create the curriculum for the economics of human trafficking?
Uh, um, so are you talking about economics, human trafficking? You're talking about like what
Oh, I'm sorry, your
the sector
class.
prediction?
You were just
Oh,
talking about.
yeah, no, it's mine.
Nice.
You have to go.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it's very exciting. It
Very
actually, and
cool.
I hadn't known because we have a topics class. You can like fit in whatever topic, into this topics class. So I thought they were going to put it in there, and my chairman at the time said, "No, I want you to go, put it through as a course." And so I had to go in front of the board and everything to get it approved. But it's exciting. Yeah, it's really exciting to teach, and I'm learning stuff all the time. I'm like, oh, next edition we're gonna do this. So
Yeah, but at the same time, and I'm excited for you. Congratulations. That's super cool that you have a class that you started.
yeah,
That's
cool.
that's very cool. It's you're exposing things too in that data, right? I mean, it's got to be a little bit daunting at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're looking at seeking asylum, and so you're looking at people seeking asylum into the United States. It's rough. It's not a good process. It's not an efficient process. It is very political. So looking at those things, and you have to talk about those things too. Looking at capital punishment. I mean, Texas is the capital of capital punishment in the world, and looking at the data and looking at what's going on, and saying that, hey, in large counties in Texas, we do quite a lot of capital punishment. In small ones, we don't. So if I'm going to commit a capital murder, I know where I'm going to, where you can commit it, because you're probably not going to get tried as a capital case. I mean, these things are. I say, well, that's not fair. Like, we're not looking at fairness in
We're not
economics.
looking at fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's looking at the data. Here's what is going on, and so, but those things are not brought to light unless you do the research on them and say, here's what's happening. So yeah, it does bring up stuff, and so oftentimes my students will have questions about, wait, but what about this? And how can this be?
Yeah,
Looking at the data,
and
what it,
also you're revealing something about a subject that may not be the safest thing to to
sure.
put front and center. Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. On your journey through academia, did you ever hit pause in your mind and go, oh, "This is a long journey," or you just did you have professors along the way that continued to light your fire, or was there one book in the beginning that you said, "This is exactly what I want to do at all costs"?
So
Those are
I
three
yeah,
questions.
yeah. So I'd actually well, I grew up with no money. It's still, pretty much there. But senior lecturers aren't rich. But I I grew up with no money, so I think that something in myself and my three siblings was always like, I got to make money. I think that's just part of maybe growing up poor and being able to, advance. So I first went, got my master's in international business and trade because I was going to be a manager in a U.S. company in another country. So I thought I could travel that way. They'd pay me to travel, and I'd make money, and it'd be great. And then I got that master's, worked for an international finance company for a couple of years, and really realized I don't like people well enough to manage them. I mean, you have to like people, like them, and I'm not that person. So that was good to know, but I wish I'd known that before I got the master's. But I use it all the time, so it's still good. And then I started researching, reading about child labor and what U.S. companies and companies in other developed countries were doing and how it was affecting child labor issues. I mean, so much of what we have coming into the United States still, we've got child labor involved in it. And, as sad as that is, it's still there. Um, and so then that hit a passion in me that, why should the clothing that I'm wearing come at the expense of a child's childhood, at their education and things like that? And, and what can we do about that? So I went, and went back to get my master's in economics. And honestly, I should have done my research. I had no idea there was that much math involved in upper level economics, or I would never have done it. But I didn't know. Fortunately, one of my classmates is from Bangladesh, and he already had a master's in engineering, and so he tutored me in math the first year because I didn't have enough math to succeed. But he helped me. I got my master's, and I think it was that passion. I knew that as Miss Wheaton, that I wasn't going to be able to do anything because a little white girl and nobody cares. I mean, honestly. Um, if you're making decisions. So I knew that I needed the PhD to make a statement. And it really does. I mean, the PhD actually absolutely opens doors that, wouldn't be opened otherwise. And if they don't open, usually we can figure out a way to use the PhD to kick them down, so that's what I needed to do. And I knew that. And so that really was my passion. But I did have a couple of professors, especially, at a couple of professors at Sam Houston State in Huntsville. They were great, really inspired my passion to do economics. And then I had two at Temple University who were just wonderful, inspiring people, very, very different backgrounds than me. They're both men, and very different backgrounds and things like this. But we're just inspiring, and we're willing to not only say, this is interesting and here, and question me, but also to say, Elizabeth, I understand what your data says, but this is not what's really happening. Just to cut it off and yeah, I got what you're trying to do here, but it's garbage. Okay, let's go back, but to have that, but then to continue to say, this is new. We're willing to help you on it. We don't know what you're doing exactly, but we're willing to support you in doing this new thing. And now, both of them know that I published a textbook, and they're, quite proud of that. So it's really neat.
Yes. I will say too, that business statistics at SMU was the most difficult class math-wise I've ever taken. Yeah. And I was proud to get a C+ in that class. I was proud.
And then we have econometrics, which is taking statistics and merging it with economics. And it's as delightful as business.
Who are the great theorists on economics that you admire? The first people who actually went down this journey. There's a lot of people confuse the economy with economics.
It's kind of interesting because, a lot of the research that I've done with economics, human trafficking, there really wasn't any. So the people that were doing economics research on human trafficking weren't economists. So, and I know them now. I tease them about it. Oh, you did economics research, did you? And they're big dogs in human trafficking, research, but they're not economists. So, so I'm kind of that person, which is still weird. And I hope somebody else picks it up one of these days so they can take the title. But the other ones, there's always been different research out there that I've built on to do the, I had a couple of professors who did economics of terrorism research. And so I was actually able to meet them. One passed away a couple of years ago, but was able to meet them, as I was doing the research and ask them questions. And, they were interested because I was taking from, working from their work and then putting it together with the chapter. So I don't know that any one of them in particular kind of, kind of talked into my path, just because it's all over the place. It just depends on the topic. And a lot of times, these things don't exist. And so I'm trying to say, okay, here I'm seeing this thing going on, and I'm trying to build a structure around it. And what kind of economic theory might be there to help us explain it, and just start to explain it.
What was the first economics book you read? Was it a textbook or was it?
Might have been a textbook. So truth is that I was getting a degree at Sam Houston State in international business. And if I did 3 extra classes, I could have a double major. And those 3 classes, of course, were economics. Yeah. So that's why I did econ, because it was easy.
Yeah.
And then I went on from there. But yeah, I just really done it because it was just 3 more classes. So it was true.
If I can piggyback on that, you're talking about professors that a couple at Sam Houston, a couple at Temple. I was talking about business stat at SMU. If it hadn't been for me reaching out to the professor and realizing there's a support there standing in front of you and not intimidated by, one thing I appreciated about my education there, and you walked me through your office and the staff, is there's an energy of support. And I saw students walking by you as we were going on the road. Hey, I've almost got the research done. And so if I could say one thing to a student out there talk to your professor.
Absolutely.
They're there to help.
Yeah.
They really are. And you really are. And I got that from you, especially when you said, okay, cell phone's off. I'm here.
Yeah.
Presently, and I expect you to be presently here.
Most of the time, I don't care if they have their cell phones, but we got to, somebody come in special, then I'm like, no.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me over there. I love that. That gave me a sense of, I don't know, it checked the box, I think, or gave me an inspiration. Never too old to go get your PhD. You just don't know what it would be in.
Well, but I think with it, I have people say, I'm thinking about getting a PhD. I was like, okay, keep thinking, because unless you say, how did I get the PhD? Yeah, there are times I didn't want to continue, it sucks.
Kind of got to get the master's first, right? And figure out what that's going to be in.
But if you're going to do the PhD, you have to have a reason. You have to know, this is why I'm doing this. And I'm going to get to that end, because there are a lot of days you don't want to do it. And you're like, yeah, but this is the reason I'm doing this. So when I hear people say, yeah, I'm thinking about getting a PhD, well, keep thinking, because until this is my reason for doing this. This is why I'm going to do this. Because you're putting yourself in a, pretty vulnerable position,
If you get your PhD in podcasting and telling other people's stories and shining a light on people,
there you go.
What would your dissertation look like?
Yeah. Right.
What would you tell people? You asked a minute ago, how can I want to change the world, but in your world, and especially in human trafficking, Beth, how would you, what would you say? What would you say in the first place? That could help you in your endeavor, and that could help if they're interested in that particular topic, right?
I think that's the thing, because we, a lot of times nonprofits will say, well, you have to be interested in this thing. This has to be your passion. So I am part of the North Texas Academic Coalition on Trafficking, which is a big title. And it is actually all of the academics in North Texas, or a large portion right now. We're kind of putting it together, but a large portion in North Texas who are doing research on trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, whatever that is. And it's really neat, because we've got professors from all over all over the area who are part of this this research. And it's neat to be part of that, because, and my research, by the way, is old now, because it was published in 2010, 2011, so it is quite old right now, but I've still, because I'm always kind of working within that to do it. But even with that, there are times when I'm sitting at that meeting and they'll laugh, because my good friend is one of the people who kind of runs that meeting. But I don't want to do the research on human trafficking anymore. I really don't. It's not my passion. My passion is child labor. But there is benefit to me of being in that group, of learning from them, and of the, really. So it's more kind of being in that group and hearing what's going on and this sort of thing than it is for me as a researcher. But, then to say, okay, those people have a passion for doing research on human trafficking. They do, and in many different ways, some medical, some criminal justice, some psychological, things like this, political science, that sort of thing. And they do, and that's really cool. And other people have a passion for environment, or for, abused animals, or, things like this. And I think too often we say, well, you should care about this. Well, yeah, you should, you should have that passion in your heart to say, oh, I don't want to see a dog kicked. I do not, but also to say that doesn't have to be the thing you go after. If that doesn't touch your heart, then simply find something that does, right? Because with bird's eye view, that touches your heart for some reason. And so you dedicate your time to that. If you dedicated your time to 10 different nonprofits, you would only be able to give them a little sliver each time of yourself, and it wouldn't have as much impact as what you have done. And so I think that instead of, for some reason, we're just supposed to have this, empathy for all of this stuff. And to some degree, yes, you need to know about it in order to say, oh, why would I not want to see a child abused? Here's why. Okay. But to really be a world changer in the environment of, child abuse prevention, you have to have a passion for that. Even with the child labor stuff I do, I don't have a passion for the child abuse, kind of area. And so I don't dedicate my time there particularly, specifically. But I think it's more the case. I think we can do a lot better good. And again, maybe it's just me as an economist looking for efficiency. But if you find something you're very passionate about, then okay, first make a donation. Do it. That's easy, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. You should make that donation, go, great, I did that thing. Excellent. Check my box. And then if you still feel passionate about it, maybe go to an event, or write some letters or become a volunteer. And as you increase your involvement with an organization and really find that is your passion, you're going to dedicate more time to it. Maybe not walk 100 miles like you did, because that's a little crazy, but do something within that space, because I'm passionate about this thing. And then you move forward in that. And I found a lot more people doing really good things when they just concentrated what they were doing, rather than to say, yes, you have to look at this wide range and you have to care about all of it and you have to donate to all of it. I just don't believe it. I think it's much more efficient to just find something you're passionate about and go with that thing. Just start going at it, and you'll find out how much of a passion it is for you.
And I appreciate your honesty about pivoting from human rights to child labor. That struck your chord, because you mentioned a second ago you're involved with Bird's Eye View Project, which I was for 3 years, and still very concerned about the work they're doing. And I say there because I'm no longer on the board. And it was simply a result of something else in my life that happened very personally to someone in my family that became front and center. And I became, it can happen like that as well, right? You can have something impact literally your life, and you say, okay, I'm pivoting, and here's something I can do over there. And there's some, concerns that I focused on there, but it's okay to change your mind, right? That doesn't mean you're leaving anything behind, because I still posted up something yesterday about it being a year ago, and please still support the Bird's Eye View Project.org, because they're doing amazing work for veterans and first responders. I wouldn't say it's not my passion right now. It's just not my calling, I guess. It doesn't fit where another thing has taken that space that, with all the stuff you have going on as a professor, as in research and writing a book and things like that. I guess this is my final question. What is because we got to talk, there's so much more to talk about. We have to do a take 2, please, part 2. When you come up for air next, Beth, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to leave it on this question. How do you balance, what's your like outside life like? Because I've seen you in nature quite a bit on post, you and your pup.
Yeah.
And friend.
Yeah. So I think I've learned over the years, and even more this year, to really, because I could work all the time on SMU stuff. It's just that encompassing, trying to create exams online, and make sure everything's just perfect, because I'm a perfectionist, and this craziness. And I could spend all day, every day doing that. Today's a writing day, but I still have to do some SMU stuff today. So it could just take over my whole life. So I think I've figured out to a better degree that there's an amount of time that I will give to SMU and to my job there, because I care about it. I care about my students. I want to do a very good job and be the best professor I can be within the limits of the time that I have to give to it, and do those things which are most beneficial, I guess, to my students. And sometimes not always to administration either, because sometimes that's a little bit of a different take on things. But try to work within the rules as much as possible, as long as it benefits my students. But then to say, and then other times, I tell my students I'm there on the days that I'm there. It's on my syllabus, and I'm there for you. Other days I'm not there because I have other things I do, like I write. Like I take a day once in a while that I'm not at SMU, and I go, over to one of the state parks, and I go hiking,
Nice.
and just try to take that time. And really, I've been much better at weekends as well. that, you know, I don't work on the Sabbath. So I just put that off entirely. And I did that a few years back. But now too, you know, to say if I've got, you know, plans on the weekends, which I do sometimes, that I actually just say, you know, I'm not going to work. All right, this work gets shoved aside, that it is not front and center of my life. And I think that's really difficult for us, especially in the United States, because we somehow that is who we are, is that, you know, and so me as a professor, I've been a professor for 25 years and but that's not who I am. That's what I do. And so really to be more of who I am is to say, you know, I take my time, I go to the gym because that keeps me healthy. I, you know, go to church because that keeps me healthy. I, you know, go hiking because that keeps me healthy, walk my dog, and these things that make me who I am. And then I also am a professor. And so I do that, you know, but I can't be a professor well when I am not being myself really well. And so really trying to step back more often and take the time to be me and to you know, pour into my life and bring in people around me who pour into my life, which is, you know, why I connected with you. I checked you out before that. Although I never knew you were on, you know, on that show back in the 80s. I mean, I have to look at some of those episodes. I think I watched every one of Walker, Texas Ranger, but I swear
Nice.
never saw you before. But
So an age me.
people like you into my life, you know, because you don't just take from me, which I expect you to do as a person, but you pour into me, you know, and I think I try to get those people around me that they call out something within me that, you know, requires something from me that should be part of a friendship, but also, you know, are equally willing to pour into you. And I think that's great.
Yeah, it is mutually beneficial. I love that. I love you, Beth.
Love you
Thank
too.
you for your time. Let's go walk the lake again. Let's get out.
Yeah, that's one time.
Today's
time.
let's do. It's 30 degrees and a little bit chilly outside today. I'm even bundled up my studio right now. So maybe when it warms up a little bit, let's do it. Okay. Thank you for coming in today, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Thank you, Beth. Bye.